Hey everyone, welcome back to the Workplace Apprenticeship 10 videos. In this video, we're going to look at the second part of Lesson 4 from Chapter 3, talking about volume and capacity. So in the first video, we had taken a look at an example talking about volume, and now we're going to look at some capacity questions. So in the SI unit, the basic unit of capacity is the liter. And so the liter is equivalent to 1,000 cubic centimeters. So in imperial units, capacity is usually measured in gallons. So if we need to do some conversions, maybe we wanted to know our capacity in quarts or pints, or say we were given pints and we want to convert back to gallons. Well, here are some of the different ratios that we know about converting between units. So our first one here is we have 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon, 2 pints is equal to 1 quart, and 2 cups is equal to 1 pint. So one thing that's really important here is that the gallon can be considered in both of your unit systems, so either in the SI unit or your imperial system. So you have to watch out with what our question is talking about. So the first one here, say we're talking about the British gallon and we want to convert that, that's equal to approximately 4.5461 liters, and 1 British pint is equal to 20 fluid ounces. So on the other hand, there's the American US gallon, which is also your imperial system. That's approximately equal to 3.8 liters, and 1 pint is approximately 16 fluid ounces. And then just to throw in another little scenario here, so what if we want to convert between the metric and the imperial systems? So here we have 1 pint is equal to 500 milliliters, 1 cup is equal to 250 milliliters, 1 fluid ounce is equal to 30 milliliters, 1 tablespoon is equal to 15 milliliters, and 1 teaspoon is equal to 5 milliliters. So if you guys are ever trying to do any of these conversions, you're just going to do the exact same thing that you guys did in your previous part of the chapters. We were just working with converting, say, just between your imperial system and then just between the metric system. So you would use, say, unit analysis, or you could use proportions. In this video, we're going to look at using unit analysis. So now let's do an example, and this one here is number 2 from your notes. So the cooling system of a car's 6-cylinder, 250 cubic inch displacement engine has a capacity of 3.5 gallons. To protect the engine against freezing temperatures, an antifreeze solution of 3/8 ethylene glycol and 5/8 water is added to the cooling system. If the cooling system is filled to capacity with the antifreeze solution, how many quarts of ethylene are in the cooling system? So what we're going to do first here is we've been given a lot of information. There's lots of numbers. So let's go and figure out what some of that important information here is. So the question being asked here is, how many quarts of ethylene glycol are in the cooling system? So we're going to use that to figure out what information is important, what information isn't. So going back to our first sentence here, it says the cooling system of a car's 6-cylinder, 250 cubic inch displacement engine has a capacity of 3.5 gallons. Now here really the only important information here is the capacity of that engine. So capacity is 3.5 gallons. We don't need to know that the car has a 6-cylinder, 250 cubic inch displacement engine. That just kind of tells you what type of engine it has, but doesn't really tell you anything about the capacity. So here really the only important information here is the capacity is 3.5 gallons. So moving on to the next sentence. To protect the engine against freezing temperatures, an antifreeze solution of 3/8 ethylene glycol and 5/8 water is added to the cooling system. Here you're given approximately how much ethylene glycol and how much water you should use. So to make 1 whole, you're going to use 3/8 ethylene glycol and 5/8 is water. Next is if the cooling system is to be filled to capacity, so that's using that whole space, how many quarts of the ethylene glycol are in the cooling system. So our first step here is we're actually going to determine just how much ethylene glycol is going to be used. So over here, we're going to determine the amount of ethylene glycol. All right, so in order to determine this, we know how much capacity the engine can hold. So one whole of it is 3.5 gallons. And then we know that 3/8 of that mixture is going to be ethylene glycol. So you're going to take your, your amount of ethylene glycol, so it'd be 3/8 of the whole capacity, which is 3.5 or 3.5 gallons. So this is very similar to, say, a percentage question. Normally you might say you'd be finding maybe 10% of a whole number. Well, this one here is very similar. We're going to be finding 3/8 of that whole number, which is 3.5. So my recommendation is, I really hate dealing with fractions. If you can, let's turn this into a decimal. So if you put 3 divided by 8 into your calculator, you should get 0.375 of usually indicates multiplication. So we're going to multiply it by that whole number. So we're finding 3/8 of that whole capacity. If you plug that into your calculator, what we should find is that we get 1.31. Now, one thing here that's really important is you're going to have to make sure you figure out what are the units for this 1.31. And where you're going to go back to look at that is this 3.5. This 3.5 here was in gallons, so it's going to have the same units. So the amount of ethylene glycol is going to be 1.31 gallons. But in the question here, they wanted the amount in quarts. So our second part of this question is to convert the gallons to quarts. So in order to convert, we're going to use unit analysis. And just like we've done in our previous videos, you first have to start off with what you're converting. Well, you want to change this 1.31. So you're going to start by just simply writing that. Then you're going to multiply it with that conversion rate. And so to figure out where your numbers go, you're trying to get rid of gallons, so that goes on the bottom. And you're trying to introduce quarts, so that goes on the top. Then you're going to go up to your conversion tables and figure out where or how much gallons are in a quart or how many quarts are in a gallon. So here we can look at our first little table here. So here we have 4 quarts is equal to 1 gallon. And that's exactly what we're looking for. We're converting gallons to quarts. So 1 belongs to the gallons, 4 belongs to the quarts. So just to repeat, 1 belonged to the gallon, 4 belonged to the quarts. Then what you can do is, if you want to, write this 1.31 gallons over 1. That way it helps you to know that you should multiply straight across. And what we should find is that we have 1.31 times 4. That's divided by 1 times 1, which is just 1. Then you could put this into your calculator. So you're going to go 1.31 times 4, and then you can divide by 1, which won't actually change your question there. And what we should find is that we would have 5.24 quarts of ethylene glycol. So just to finalize this question, make sure you guys write a sentence, since this is a word problem. So you could say that the car will need 5.24 quarts of ethylene glycol. So that is everything here for this video. So thank you guys so much for watching. If you guys have any questions, make sure to come see me in class, or you guys can text me on Remind 101. And once again, thank you so much for watching.